Greetings, this is Scotty Reed with the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit which is focusing on new media for the masses. We also operate the Black Talk Radio Network. I want to read an open letter that I have written to Monique and Netflix, considering the very public dispute that they are having concerning a proposed special. I wrote it down, and I hope y'all bear with me as I read it, because I tend to be very passionate when it comes to prison slavery, and sometimes I don't always communicate effectively because I let my anger at the entire system sometimes, just override everything. So I took the time out to write an open letter, make some points that I would like to bring up for my proposal that Netflix and Monique do a benefit comedy special, with the proceeds going to the new abolitionist movement and the organizations that put together last year's Millions for Prisoners Human Rights March and Rally, which occurred in Washington, D.C. The rally occurred in a park across the street from the White House that victims of slavery built. And a lot of people don't recognize that slavery has never been abolished, and that and involuntary servitude is still legal as quote unquote punishment for crime. So please bear with me as I read this open letter. Monique, I want to thank you for responding to me on Twitter. You did not have to respond, and many people would have just simply ignored me. So I do want to thank you for responding and saying it is a good idea that I proposed when I proposed to you and Netflix over Twitter that y'all do a benefit comedy special for the coalition of new abolitionists who put together that march I just got through speaking about. Now, also, Monique, I want to thank you for showing concerns for prisoners and mentioning in the 2007 comedy special you did, and it's titled, "I Could Have Been Your Cellmate." And you suggested that anyone could end up on a prison plantation by making one mistake. My only issue with that is that while that's true, the conditions, the poverty conditions, the relationship that the United States government and corporations have with private prison corporations also feeds into that. And that 60%, I've heard, people cite this statistic that upwards of 60% of all people who are in prisons outside of the immigration issue, but, we stand in solidarity with them too. But 60% of those who are in prison are in there for nonviolent, victimless drug crimes. They are the victims of a war that was started by Richard Nixon, the former president, who his chief of staff said that he was starting the drug war to target black folks and hippies who were protesting against the Vietnam War. And it had the prison population has increased exponentially with every successful administration. And right now, the United States has the world's largest prison population. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And while people are familiar with the phrase mass incarceration, we call it prison slavery because that is what the 13th Amendment says. So again, I do want to thank you for showing some concern back in 2007. I want to thank you also for recognizing that prisoners may have made bad choices based on being abused and exploited, and that circumstances can lead people into committing crimes. We don't want to act like, that it's okay for people to murder and that they shouldn't face some kind of repercussions, but they should not be facing punishment. They should be facing rehabilitation. They should be getting help, okay, for the mental health issues and just, all that goes along with that. But again, I will point out the majority of the people are in there for nonviolent, victimless drug crimes. And even those who do harm other people, sometimes they are pushed into those decisions by poverty conditions and some of the things. So, but I do want to thank you for recognizing some of the external factors that lead people into making bad decisions like that. I also want to thank you, Monique, for pointing out 10 years ago that women are the fastest growing segment of the prison population today. Now, this is an issue that I have been trying to push off and on through our radio program, New Abolitionist Radio, and also, through my other media offerings, that women are the fastest growing demographic. I know that the media likes to focus a lot on black males, and certainly we have been targeted, but black women are the fastest growing, and poor women, because we want to recognize that regardless of a person's skin color, that no one deserves slavery. And while it does impact this issue, prison slavery impacts black people the most, it does affect other people outside of our group as well, especially if they are poor. All right, so the next thing, so I thank you for that. And also I want to point out that last Sunday, I sent out a tweet where I was standing in solidarity with the Women's March 2018, I think is what they called it. But I pointed out that I wish more of these women were abolitionists and that they were raising the issue of prison slavery, especially with women being the fastest growing demographic. Many of them are mothers, and sometimes their children end up in foster care, which is another exploitive system and also is part of the pipeline to prison. We heard of the school to prison pipeline, foster care. We read stories of many abuses of children in foster care. So, we have this women's movement that I feel like is being sponsored by establishment, politicians and organizations who are ignoring prison slavery. But they have the audacity, or some people had an audacity, to put a pink hat on our abolitionist ancestor statue, Harriet Tubman, but they are not making the prison enslavement of women a central plank in their platform. So I wanted to point that out. Also, I want to thank you for pointing out 10 years ago that many prisoners grow up without one of their parents. I think in that film you mentioned that many of the women that were in that prison didn't have fathers. Well, I wonder why they didn't have fathers, because we know the myth of the absent black father has been proven wrong. So if those fathers were missing, it's quite possible that because they were targeted for prison slavery. So that is just another aspect of how modern day slavery and human trafficking is still tearing families apart. All right. To Netflix, I want to thank Netflix for commissioning Ava DuVernay to make the Oscar-nominated film The 13th. It could have been better by featuring prison slavery abolitionists instead of reformists. Some of those people in that film played a direct role in passing legislation during their political careers that led to an increase of the prison enslavement. And so many, in the film, so many in the public never get to see the entire text of the 13th Amendment. I remember on the 150th anniversary of the 13th, all these mainstream articles came out, and they would put slavery and involuntary servitude shall be abolished, ... What happened to the other 47 words? And I made a video documenting all these mainstream articles talking about the 150th anniversary of the 13th Amendment and putting out this false information that it abolished slavery. And they were being I say purposely deceitful in writing about that, because why wouldn't you include the entire text? Why would you leave out the part where it says except as punishment for crime? So that film was very important, which I have talked about in previous videos. So thank you, Netflix, for putting that out. Also, thank you for allowing activists to show that film in the community, in public settings, without having to pay licensing fees, so that we can have discussions and educating the public that slavery was never abolished. What we know is mass incarceration is actually a continuation of slavery, because it's right there in the 13th Amendment. So that was very important to us in the New Abolitionist movement, because New Abolitionist Radio, we had been doing a program since 2012. And obviously, we are grassroots media, and we do not have the reach that you have, Netflix. So it was very important that you put that film out. And again, allowing us activists to use that film to further educate the public. Also, I want to thank you for providing an affordable service for poor people who may not be able to afford expensive cable packages. So, I just want to acknowledge that. Now, let me read this part, because I want to make sure I get it right. As far as the dispute between the two of you, Monique and Netflix executives, I can objectively see both sides of the issue. From Monique's perspective, that she is a big name in comedy, and we know how Black women in particular, we talk about white women only getting 80 cents on the dollar towards white males, but guess what? The entire Black family, Black women and Black men, we don't even make that much. So I can see Monique's perspective in thinking that possibly played a role in your decision to only offer her, the $500,000. I can also see it from Netflix perspective, in that, Monique, you haven't made a comedy special or done a stand-up routine, in quite some time, because you've been focusing on film. So I can understand it, and maybe your base isn't right now as energetic, and you don't have as many as some of the other names. But again, I just want to be objective. I want to acknowledge that you both have a point, but since I'm not privy to the details of the negotiations, I'll leave it at that. However, Netflix, Monique has extended an olive branch to you. She says that she thinks it's a good idea to do this special with you, with proceeds going to the organizations who are part of the coalition of new abolitionists addressing the issue of prison slavery via the 13th Amendment exception clause. And we raised money last year to do the Millions for Prisoners Human Rights March and rally, which I spoke about earlier. And so I know that if this special happens, the community will come out strong for this. Okay, the community will, because both of you have done things to support the community, and we would support strongly this collaboration, which will benefit those organizations working every day on this issue of prison slavery. So I just hope that it happens. Now, lastly, this is my issue with films and television shows that go into prisons to provide the public with prison entertainment. It is a violation of the prisoner's human rights, with people profiting from their incarceration, from their enslavement. And maybe some people don't see it that way, and I don't think that was Monique's intent. I don't know if that was Showtime's intent, so I'm not going to speak about them. But I know Monique cares, because she again did not even have to respond to me. She doesn't have to be willing to do this benefit comedy special to address this issue. But we have to admit that it is exploitation, no matter how altruistic the motive was to perform in a prison. You got network television shows that's making millions upon millions in advertisements showing our people in cages in these prisons for public entertainment, and it desensitizes us to the issue. And we present it like all of these people belong there. That's how they present it, like all the people belong there, and that nobody should be in prison for victimless crimes, especially from the drug war and what have you, or our women and men who are forced into prostitution or something because of poverty. And we know the wealth gap in this country, and people do things that they otherwise may not do because they live in poverty. So nobody should be in prison going to jail over stuff like that. And so, all of us make mistakes. We don't know until we know. And someone else brings a different perspective, and hopefully we'll be open to see that perspective. So we all make mistakes. We're all human beings. And so I'm not coming out condemning you, either one of you, but I do think the film needs to be removed, a comedy special, and be replaced with this benefit special. So in closing, I hope that this benefit special ideal I have presented, that Monique agrees with, that Netflix, you make it become a reality. And I thank you both for considering it. So peace and blessings to you both from the new abolitionist movement. Let's end slavery in all its forms, as the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights calls for. Peace.
The Black Talk Media Project, a U.S.-based nonprofit, has operated the premier online Black Talk radio network for 9 years. The organization has helped independent Black media producers establish their own digital radio stations and platforms. However, it is time to expand our work based on the vision of founder Scotty Reed, a U.S. Army veteran and communications specialist who wants to build the Black version of National Public Radio, with community talk radio stations and media centers across the USA. These stations and media centers will focus on developing local talk radio hosts, addressing local community issues, and providing classrooms to teach new media production. We can accomplish this goal without corporate and government grants, maintaining true independence. Donate to the Black Talk Media Project or obtain a subscription to the social media platform btrcommunity.com for just $24 annually. Help us establish new Black media for the new millennium.